The things you chase run away from you. The things you stop chasing turn around and wonder where you went. What if I told you that stepping back actually draws her closer? That distance isn't about detachment, it's about strength. In a world where everyone's trying to be louder, more available, constantly in the mix, real power comes from doing the opposite. This isn't about playing games. This isn't about being cold or calculating. This is about understanding something deeper. Something that goes against everything modern dating tells you. The less you chase, the more attractive you become. Not because you're manipulating her emotions, but because you're finally mastering your own. Today, we're going to explore 10 reasons why pulling back makes her want you more. And it all comes down to one thing: becoming the man who doesn't need her validation to feel whole. Because when you stop needing someone to complete you, that's when you become impossible to ignore. Let's dive in. Number 1. Absence isn't distance, it's depth. You're not avoiding her, you're grounding yourself. Most men think they have to keep talking to stay relevant. But a man who knows his worth understands that his absence can speak louder than words. Think about it this way. If you're always within reach, there's no room for her to truly miss you. When you step back, not out of anger, but out of intention, you create space for her to feel what life is like without your presence. This isn't about playing hard to get. It's about being hard to lose. When you're constantly texting, constantly available, always trying to stay on her radar, you think you're staying connected. But you're actually diluting your impact. Real connection isn't built through frequency. It's built through presence. And sometimes the most powerful presence is felt in the quietest moments. When you pull back with purpose, you're not abandoning her. You're solidifying your own foundation. You become the man who doesn't need constant validation. And that's what separates emotional strength from emotional noise. Epictetus said it best: "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But I'll take it further. We have 1 presence and countless distractions. Use your presence wisely. Your energy becomes sharper when you focus it. Not scattered across 100 texts, but concentrated in moments that matter. Imagine this. She's used to messages flowing in from everywhere. But then there's you, the one who doesn't chase, the one who stepped back calmly without explanation. This contrast doesn't go unnoticed. Your absence becomes a mirror, reflecting back the strength and peace you once offered. This is the paradox of true presence. You don't need to fill every moment with words to be remembered. Often, it's your quiet strength that leaves the deepest mark. Number 2. Emotional restraint signals value. We've all been there. That urge to text back immediately, to double text when the first message goes ignored, to check if she's seen your message. It's natural. You cared. You wanted connection. And your instincts told you to reach for closeness. But how many times has that impulse actually deepened the connection? Probably never. Emotional restraint in a world addicted to instant reactions isn't just strength, it's rare. And rarity signals value. When you hold back, not out of fear, but out of discipline, you're sending a silent message. I don't chase, I choose. You're not avoiding connection. You're choosing conscious control. You're showing that your self-worth doesn't crumble under silence. That's not cold, it's composed. It says, I've built something within myself that doesn't need constant validation to survive. Let me paint you a picture. 2 men text a woman. One follows up within minutes when she doesn't respond. He's sweet, sure, but predictable. The other sends 1 message, then shifts his focus back to his life, his goals, his peace. He's not playing hard to get. He simply doesn't need to be gotten. That difference lingers. She notices it. She starts wondering what's happening in his world because he's not making her the center of it. This is the paradox of attraction. The more you center yourself, the more you draw others toward you. The less you reach, the more room you give her to lean in. And when you give her space to miss you authentically, not manipulatively, your presence becomes more meaningful. As Epictetus taught, any person capable of angering you becomes your master. The same is true for neediness. If her delayed reply throws off your whole day, you're giving away your power. But when you choose calm over chaos, focus over fear, you reclaim it. You're not here to be ruled by emotion. You're here to master it. A Stoic man doesn't suppress emotion. He shapes it. He doesn't respond from insecurity. He moves from intention. Number 3. Mystery awakens. Curiosity. She doesn't need to know your every move. In fact, the less she knows, the more her mind starts to wander. Why hasn't he called? What's going on in his world? Is he thinking about me? That curiosity, that subtle, nagging wonder, is exactly where attraction begins to reawaken. When you step back, not out of bitterness but with intention, you give her space to feel the weight of your absence. Not because you're playing games, but because you're living your life. You're not being shady, you're being sovereign. A man grounded in purpose doesn't need to narrate his every move or seek constant reassurance. His silence speaks for him. His distance has energy. When you reduce contact, something unexpected happens. Her imagination fills in the gaps. And that's powerful, because when someone's imagination gets involved, emotions get stirred. She starts to compare the feeling of having you around versus the emptiness when you're not. Most men try to stay relevant by staying loud. But relevance isn't built through noise. It's built through value, and value becomes more noticeable in its absence. A Stoic man understands this. He doesn't chase moments of validation to feel seen. He moves quietly, purposefully. He's not withholding attention to punish. He's just not addicted to being constantly perceived. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things." Meaning, if your distance makes her confused, that's okay. You're not here to be understood at every step. You're here to walk in alignment with who you are. So instead of texting out of fear that she'll forget you, choose stillness. Let her feel the shift. Let her sit with the questions. A woman doesn't forget a man who had the discipline to step away and the confidence not to explain why. Your mystery becomes your magnet, and what sparks in her mind during that silence, the curiosity, the nostalgia, the craving for clarity, is often far more powerful than any perfectly worded message you could have sent. Number 4. Presence without performance. Ever feel like you have to entertain her over text just to keep her interested? Stop. You're not a performer. You're a man with presence. Your attention is valuable. And when it's no longer routine, it becomes rare. Rare becomes meaningful. A Stoic man doesn't seek attention. He commands it simply by being centered in who he is, with or without applause. What happens when you stop trying so hard to be on? When you stop texting every morning just to keep the spark alive? You create space, not just for her to miss you, but for her to respect you. Most men operate out of fear. Fear that if they don't entertain, she'll get bored. Fear that if they're not constantly available, she'll forget them. But here's the truth. That fear actually kills attraction. When everything you say starts sounding like a pitch, it feels less like presence and more like performance. Picture this. One man texts her jokes, compliments, updates, memes, constantly feeding her attention, hoping it keeps her hooked. At first, she might enjoy it, but over time, she stops leaning in. Why? Because he's always there. Predictable. Easy. Now picture another man who checks in when he has something real to say, who lets silence breathe between messages, who doesn't try to impress, but simply is. That man feels grounded. That man feels intentional. That man doesn't need to be loud to be noticed. And trust me, she notices. Epictetus taught that freedom is the only worthy goal in life. And freedom begins when you stop trying to earn someone's attention through effort and start trusting that your presence, quiet, calm, unshaken, is enough. When your presence isn't driven by pressure to entertain, it becomes an anchor. It gives off the message that you're not seeking applause. You're grounded in self-respect. She doesn't just receive your message. She feels it because it came from a place of stillness, not need. That's why less contact creates more attraction. Not because you're playing games, but because you've stopped trying to win her and started living for something greater than approval. Before we jump into part number 5, take a moment to do me a small favor. Hit like, subscribe, and share this message. Your simple action can help more people who are struggling with this issue find the content they need. Thank you for being a part of this. Number 5. Let her feel the gap. You leave. Don't rush to fill the silence. That silence is her mirror. When you stop reaching out, she has to face the emotional weight of your absence. Most men panic in that gap. They try to patch it up with one more message, one more check-in, thinking they'll lose her if they don't stay visible. But here's the truth. What creates attraction isn't more contact. It's meaningful space. The kind of space where your absence isn't a punishment. It's a presence in itself. Think about it. When someone is always around, their value can start to blur. But when they step back, suddenly their presence echoes, their energy lingers. And that's where curiosity brews. You let the space speak. Let her wonder. Let her reflect. She won't feel your absence if you never give her the chance. You're not being cruel. You're being conscious. You're allowing her mind to roam, to fill in the blanks, to realize what your presence meant only after it's no longer guaranteed. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If her thoughts begin to dwell on you, let them deepen without interference. You don't interrupt that process by showing up too soon. You give her the gift of stillness. And in that stillness, she begins to feel the contrast between a man who needs her attention to feel whole and a man who is whole without needing anything at all. Picture this. She's used to hearing from you every morning. A quick good morning, maybe a meme or a sweet check-in. But one day, you stop. Not out of spite, not out of manipulation, but because you've shifted inward to focus on your peace, your purpose. At first, she notices. Then she starts to wonder, is he okay? Then it turns into, does he miss me? And eventually, why do I miss him so much? That's when the gap is doing its quiet work. So don't rush to close it. Don't try to manage how she feels with constant contact. A man who understands his value trusts the space he leaves behind, because that's where reflection happens. That's where desire grows. That's where true connection begins. Not in noise, but in stillness. Number 6. Attention, given freely, is more powerful. When you talk less, every message matters more. When you appear less, your presence hits harder. One thoughtful check-in after a week of silence is more powerful than 100 low-effort texts. Why? Because you gave it freely. Not out of need, not out of boredom, not out of fear, but because you chose to. That's what Stoicism teaches us. Intentionality over impulse. Self-command over emotional reaction. Here's the truth. Attention is only powerful when it's rooted in freedom. If you're constantly texting her, calling her, commenting on everything she posts, that attention starts to lose its value. It's no longer a gift. It becomes routine. Something expected. Something easy to take for granted. But when you pull back, not to punish, not to manipulate, but to center yourself, that's when your presence becomes rare. And what's rare becomes valuable. Consider this. If someone hears from you all day, every day, your voice blends into the noise. But if you disappear into your purpose for a while, working on your goals, growing silently, holding your frame, and then you reach out with a simple but thoughtful message, it hits completely different. It becomes something she pauses to read, something she thinks about, something that stirs curiosity. That single message carries more emotional weight than 10 days of small talk ever could. Epictetus taught that we should never act from compulsion, but always from conscious choice. You're not texting because you need a response to feel whole. You're not calling to check if she still cares. You're grounded. And from that place of peace, you choose when and how to engage. Imagine you go a few days without reaching out. Not because you're playing games, but because you're genuinely focused on your life. She notices the quiet. She starts to wonder. Then when your message comes, it doesn't feel like obligation. It feels intentional. That's the difference. That's what makes it attractive. So when you think about how to show you care, don't confuse constant access with emotional depth. Sometimes the most meaningful thing you can give is space. And when you return from that space with clarity and purpose, your presence becomes something she not only notices, but feels. Number 7, clarity over chatter. When you go quiet, things become clear. Is she reaching out because she truly cares? Or was it just habit? Is your connection real or just familiar? A man of depth doesn't confuse noise with love. He uses silence to separate what's genuine from what's shallow. When in doubt, don't speak more. Observe more. Silence isn't just the absence of words. It's the presence of awareness. In the constant back and forth of modern communication, it's easy to confuse activity for intimacy. But just because someone responds doesn't mean they're invested. Just because the chat keeps going doesn't mean it's building anything meaningful. When you reduce contact, you create contrast. Suddenly, your voice isn't another ping in her notifications. It's something she starts to miss, something that stands out from the noise. And that's where real attraction begins. Not in how often you speak, but in what your absence makes her feel. You've probably seen this before. Maybe you were always the one initiating conversations. Good morning texts, check-ins, memes, compliments. It felt natural at first, but over time you noticed the energy wasn't being matched. So you decide to stop, not to manipulate her, but to observe. And then, silence. No response. Days pass. No effort from her side. That moment stings, but it reveals something deeper. She was comfortable receiving, not necessarily connected. Your quiet didn't create distance, it exposed it. That's the power of less contact. It removes the distractions and shows you who values your energy, not just your attention. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. I seek the truth." That's the mindset. You're not afraid to learn the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. You're not clinging to illusions. You're cutting through them. Your silence isn't cold. It's a tool for clarity. It says, "Let me see what remains when I stop trying to hold it all together." And what you'll notice is this. If there was something real, your quiet will draw it closer. She'll start to wonder, to reflect, to reach out, not out of obligation, but desire. Because when you stop feeding something out of habit, only what's alive will respond. A woman who truly feels you will notice when you're gone. She'll sense the shift because you weren't just another conversation. You were presence, intention, and calm. So instead of filling the space with more words, trust the silence. Trust that what's meant for you will move toward you, not away. And trust yourself to see clearly, because clarity is far more powerful than chatter. And clarity is what creates real attraction, not confusion, dressed up as connection. Number 8, you teach her how to value you. Your communication pattern becomes the standard. If you're always the one initiating, always available, always the first to reach out, she begins to expect it. Not because she's unkind, but because you've set the rhythm. And anything repeated too often, no matter how pure the intention, starts to feel routine. But when you pull back, not with anger, not with games, but with calm purpose, you interrupt that rhythm. You create a space where she has to pause and ask herself, wait, where is he? And that pause is powerful. Less contact doesn't mean you care less. It means you care enough about yourself to stop overextending. A Stoic man doesn't chase validation. He doesn't keep talking just to be heard. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, don't do it. If it is not true, don't say it." When your words are intentional and your presence is earned, not thrown around, it begins to mean something. Women don't respond to noise. They respond to energy. And nothing speaks louder than a man who chooses when to speak and when to step back. Let's say you used to check in with her constantly. Morning texts, midday replies, sending memes at night just to stay on her radar. You thought you were being consistent, but she started replying slower. Maybe she barely noticed when you messaged. That's the moment you stop. Not to play hard to get, but to remind yourself, your attention is valuable. Don't give it to someone who treats it like background noise. Then the silence begins. A few days pass. Suddenly she messages, "Hey, you've been quiet." That's the shift. That's not manipulation, it's balance returning. She's starting to realize your presence had weight because you taught her, by stepping back, what happens when you're no longer filling the air with effort. You're not being cold, you're being centered, and a centered man is magnetic. He doesn't beg for connection, he inspires it by how he carries himself, by choosing quality over quantity, by understanding that less contact, when rooted in self-respect, doesn't create distance, it creates depth. So yes, you teach her how to value you. Not with lectures, not with emotional pleas, but with your standards, with your restraint, with your ability to let silence do what words often can't. When a woman sees that you don't need constant attention to feel whole, she begins to see you differently. She starts to feel your worth in your absence. And that's when attraction deepens, not because you tried harder, but because you needed less. Number 9, your life is the attraction. When you're not texting her, what are you doing? That's not a rhetorical question. It's the difference between becoming unforgettable and becoming irrelevant. Here's the truth. Less contact only creates more attraction when the space you leave is filled with something meaningful. If your silence is just you, sulking, scrolling, waiting for her to notice, then you're not mysterious, you're idle. But if your silence is backed by movement, real movement, then that space becomes magnetic. She doesn't miss a message. She misses the man behind the message. The man who used to speak with calm confidence because he was building something. A man who wasn't always available because his time had value. Maybe she starts wondering, why hasn't he checked in? But that thought quickly evolves into, what is he working on? Who is he becoming without me? That's where attraction blooms. Not from scarcity, but from strength. Picture this. You haven't reached out in a few days. You're not cold, not bitter. You're just focused. You're training. You're learning. You're building a future. You're locked in, not locked out. And then maybe she catches a glimpse, through social media, mutual friends, or pure intuition, that while she's been waiting for a message, you've been creating momentum. That realization stings in a different way. Not because you're ignoring her, but because you're evolving without her. This is where Stoicism comes in. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's the essence of it. You're not stepping back to punish her. You're stepping forward to fulfill yourself. And when a man does that, when he chooses purpose over pursuit, mission over messaging, he becomes unforgettable. His presence starts to echo in his absence. Not because he begged to be remembered, but because he left a trail of value behind him. So the question isn't, why aren't you texting her? The question is, what are you doing with that silence? If you fill it with purpose, it becomes power. If you fill it with progress, it becomes presence. A woman doesn't miss the guy who begged for attention. She misses the man who no longer needed it. Let her wonder. Let her feel the shift. Let your life do the talking. Number 10. Less contact, more control. Of self. Less contact puts the power back in your hands, not to dominate her, but to stop being controlled by your own emotions. And that's the difference most men never understand. They confuse constant communication with connection and end up becoming slaves to their own anxiety. But when you step back, not to play games, but to gain clarity, you stop reacting impulsively. You begin to respond with intention. When you're always the one reaching out, always available, you're not just giving her your time, you're giving her your power. But when you create space, when you choose silence over chasing, you begin to reclaim that power. You stop asking, "What does she think of me?" and start asking, "What do I think of myself?" And that shift, that's where attraction begins to grow. Because she doesn't feel your neediness. She feels your presence, your groundedness, your calm. Epictetus taught that freedom begins the moment you no longer allow external things to disturb your inner peace. So instead of texting her when you feel uncertain, take a deep breath and remind yourself. You don't need a response to be secure. You don't need constant contact to be valuable. The more disciplined you are with your emotions, the more magnetic you become. Let's say you've been talking to a woman, and she suddenly slows down her replies. Most guys panic. They double text. They ask, "Did I say something wrong?" But a man who understands this principle doesn't flood her inbox. He disappears into his purpose. He goes to the gym. He reads. He builds. And guess what happens? She notices the gap he left. She starts to wonder, not because he forced it, but because he chose not to force anything at all. Remember, your silence is not absence. It's energy refocused. Less contact isn't about punishing her. It's about protecting your peace. And when a woman senses that you're not controlled by the need for attention, that you have emotional restraint and direction, it triggers something rare in her: respect, curiosity, and yes, attraction. So the next time you're tempted to reach out just to feel something, pause. Reclaim your center. Less contact, more control. Not over her, but over you. When you stop chasing, you start winning. Not because you're playing games, but because you're finally playing for yourself. Marcus Aurelius said it best: you have power over your mind, not outside events. The woman meant for, you will feel that power even in your silence. The one who isn't will show you through her indifference. Either way, you discover the truth. And truth, brother, is freedom. Your value isn't measured by how fast she texts back. It's built in the gym at 5 a.m., in the books you read, in the dreams you chase when no one's watching, in the man you become when the world goes quiet. So step back. Build in silence. Let your life do the talking. The right woman will notice. The wrong one will teach you to value yourself more. Both are gifts. What's your story? Drop a comment and tell me. What part of this hit you hardest? If you're building yourself in silence right now, just type, "I choose myself first." Hit that subscribe button if you're ready for more Stoic truth. And watch the next video. We're diving deeper into the masculine journey of healing and strength. Remember, the strongest men don't need to prove it. They just are. Stay powerful. Thanks for joining Modern Stoic Dating today. If this resonated with you, don't stop here. Subscribe, explore more of our content, and let's continue this Stoic journey together. Stay strong, stay grounded, and until next time, keep cultivating your inner strength. See you in the next video.